Hello and welcome to the Barcast. I'm your host, Nick Barr, coming to you on a brisk Monday morning here in New York. Last week, I published an essay about how I'm using an AI practice partner with my IFS self-therapy practice. And this was a labor of love. It took me a long time to prepare, and to my surprise and excitement, a lot of people read it and responded positively and are now poking around themselves using either my prototype or building their own prototypes to experiment with IFS and self therapy and use these AI tools to help sort of bootstrap their practice. And over the weekend, I had this feeling and this wish of wanting to give a little bit more guidance to beginners of a certain personality type. And I count myself among this type. We would call ourselves probably systems thinkers. I think most systems thinkers identify as such, but a little bit of like Jeff Foxworthy, you might be a systems thinker if dot 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 to frame us. Like you might be a systems thinker if in order to sort of even make meaning, you need to start building the map. Like you sort of feel really drawn to systematizing, map making, even at the earliest stages of learning something. You sort of are doing a parallel path of learning the thing and also mapping the thing. Systems thinkers tend to want to withdraw and learn and absorb as much knowledge as possible before interacting with others. So they're not necessarily introverted, but they or we feel a really strong wish to learn and to understand, and a deep insecurity when we feel like we haven't fully understood yet. And it takes a lot for us to feel like we fully understand. And so there's sort of this withdrawing or retreating tendency that we have, so that we can learn and know and grow and understand and then share. And then I think we're just really cognitive. We're really head centered, and we're really fast. Like systems thinkers are typically like really perceptive and quick in making connections. To the extent that oftentimes they're like not intelligible to other people because they've been doing all this map making and sense making on their own, and then they share it and it's clear to them and it's fully blown, and then everyone else is like, what are you talking about? So that's maybe another quality. Okay, so that's out of the way. What I tried to just put together 3 lenses for systems thinkers to get the most out of their IFS practice. So these are lenses that I've started to apply for myself, and I wish I had them earlier. So I'm just putting it out there in case anyone has learned about me and learned about IFS through my essay. They're excited to dive in. I just hope that these lenses are helpful. So the first lens, really simple one. Have I met my systematizing part yet? So if I'm doing IFS and I'm really starting to see all these parts, and yet none of them is really has certain qualities that we just talked about, the certain qualities of a systems thinker, then that's a sign that I might be doing a lot of my parts work, my IFS practice, from a systematizing part, right? It's like I haven't taken off all of my lenses yet. And of course, like, it doesn't mean I'm doing it wrong or it's bad or anything like that. There just might be an opportunity to experience deeper healing and self understanding if I'm able to find and get to know my systematizing part. This is my illustration of one of my systematizing parts, which I call the connector. And from my own experience, these parts are like really deep. The connector is, he lives kind of in my head, and basically is nonverbal. and is like really, 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 really fast. And the connector for me is closely related to avoiding really kind of extreme levels of pain around connection and loss of connection that I haven't fully unpacked. But I'm just sharing that to encourage people to investigate on their own, and also to suggest that if you're a systems thinker, your systems thinking part is probably very low level, like very deep, isn't going to be like, oh yeah, there's that map making part of me. I mean, that might be one of the pieces, but you'll probably need to go deeper. You're probably quote unquote blended with that part quite a bit, which makes sense, right? Like if you self-identify as a systems thinker, then your systems thinking part is probably really deep. If you identify as a generous person, your generosity part is going to be pretty deep, right? We're just talking about sort of personality here. So, yeah, have I met my systematizing parts yet? And if I haven't, maybe some sessions to kind of like try to invite that part to come out would be helpful. And it probably won't be easy. Okay, that's the first lens. Second lens, this is probably the biggest one in my life, and is a continual work in progress. I know my parts, but do my parts know me? So I've seen kind of a lot of positive reactions to the work that I shared of like, oh, this is so cool. I can like collect all my parts. These are like cards that I can collect. And the design choices I made contribute to that feeling. Like that, I don't think that's a misinterpretation of what I'm putting out there, but there's something really dangerous about that move toward the feeling of collecting parts. That is like the systems thinkers kind of catnip of, oh, I know this and I know that. And you can imagine how that's feeding the systems thinkers part, right? Oh, I feel competent. I feel safe. I feel like I'm doing the thing. I feel brilliant. I'm having fun because there's more connections to make, and so on and so on and so on. And then you might do a practice that's kind of implied from this illustration here. If you were to work with a therapist or do this on your own, but this can be really beneficial to do with someone else, is like you can put some chairs in the room or even just put spots in a room, and then go to, one spot represents you, and another response, maybe another spot might represent the part that you're working with. And so it's sort of like a role-playing game, an improv game where you can inhabit and embody these parts. So it's really like an explicit switching of modes of, here I am sitting in the chair, and here in one chair is Nick, the 38-year-old man, deep voice, and, a dad and a father, blah, blah, blah. And here I am looking, in the other chair at a 5-year-old boy, let's say, and connecting with him and getting to know him and offering him support and noticing things about him, and so on and so on and so on. And as systems thinkers, we're really good at that, seeing and knowing another part. The invitation is then go sit in the other chair. It's funny, it's very powerful. So it's like, even because of the camera situation, I'm not going to be able to move. So I'll just sort of try to shake it out. And now I'm this 5-year-old boy who, maybe went through something or is in exile in IFS terms, whatever, right? Some other part. And we can ask this 5-year-old boy, do you know Nick? Do you know Nick, the man? And maybe the part does, but maybe the part says, I don't know. I'm all alone. I don't have anybody. And when you notice that there's a mismatch, that from the quote unquote self or from the grown part, everything there is to know about this young part, But then when you inhabit the young part, he's like, I'm completely alone. At least for me, that was quite a shock to my system. And it was such a beneficial shock because it completely upended my belief that I was doing IFS and learning and getting to know my parts. IFS is really building a relationship, at least my understanding of it, is really building a relationship between parts. And so that relationship is like, it's as real in a way as your relationship with your friends. And so probably it's easier for you when you think about your friendships to think about the way that you know them and are known by them. And that feels really natural. With your inner parts, it's so easy to fall into this feeling of like, I just do all the knowing. And you self-identify as that knowing pole and drift away from the pole of being known. So finding out from your parts, do you know me? You can ask them that. Who do you see? Would you like me to sit with you? And like let them answer. So doing IFS wrong would be saying something like, yeah, I think that 5-year-old boy wants me to sit down with him. Anytime you're starting with like, I think that, or it seems like, or whatever, you're maybe still going from the knower side. If you say something like, yeah, he's kind of hugging his knees and I can tell he wants me to sit next to him, but he doesn't want to ask. So I'm just going to sit next to him and maybe like a couple feet away from him and just sit quietly for a little bit and see what he wants to do. Okay, he just scooched a little bit closer to me. Like now I'm in it. And that's real union, that's real relationship, and that's giving the part the opportunity to be known. So that's the second lens. I know my parts, but do they know me? And then the third lens is going outside of your inner work and asking yourself, like, how is this impacting my real as in external, real as in other souls or around relationships? My partner, my parents, my kids, my family, whoever. And I want to say a little bit more about this because I don't want this lens to be interpreted as those relationships should be getting better, ... I don't know. And I mean this like in the most felt sense, like I don't know what the correlation is between parts work and IFS and the health of your existing relationships, of my existing relationships. Because what IFS is doing for us oftentimes is changing and transforming our inner system. And the relationships we have in the world probably are based on the old system that we have. And so difficulty and friction and challenge within existing relationships totally makes sense, as does the ending of some relationships. Some relationships might not want to or be able to survive whatever change is happening inside of you. So, if you're, well, let's just stick with systems thinkers. Systems thinkers might have a lot of pain that they haven't opened up to, that they've been systematizing their way out of experiencing. And so the mere experiencing of that pain might result in them showing up really different in their relationships. And it might get a little ugly and messy. And some people might be like, well, I love this person for their intellect. I don't like, now that they're really suffering, I don't know how fun this is for me. So there might be sort of like that initial spike of difficulty. And then after you've done some processing and integrating of these wounded parts, like your personality might change and you might show up, you might suddenly be a lot more spontaneous and open and wanting to hang out. And that could completely change your relationships. Maybe your partner was someone who, never wanted to party and see other people, right? And you have to sort of talk about that, or I don't know. It's so wide open in terms of what could happen. So the thing that I want to make sure isn't implied here is that like your relationships should be getting better, or else you're not doing IFS right. All I'm saying is like something interesting should be happening, and you should be able to connect your sort of IFS work with how these relationships are changing a little bit. Um, the concern that I would have for a systems thinker like myself is you do all the work kind of in the cave, in the lab, in the basement, and it's very private, and you've got parts everywhere and it's making sense to you, and you're kind of having these brilliant insights, and like that cave is like sealed off from all of your other relationships. And so then you probably something will happen, but people will experience you as probably like a little bit off or something like that. So what I wish for you is just a little bit more porousness between the IFS work that you're doing yourself and your relationships, right? And this is one of the reasons why systems thinkers are going to be drawn to my work, because um, it's DIY, do it yourself. Don't have to have any friction with like a therapist or a professional or a partner. It's AI enabled, right? So it's like, oh, I can tune the system and tweak it. So there's a lot of agency, a lot of power involved in this work, which is in some ways great, and in other ways is sort of risky. It's a risky move because it has this potential to strengthen the systematizing part. And so these three lenses are crafted to check whether your work is, to what extent your work is feeding the systematizing part at the expense of knowing the wider system. So just really quick recapping on that. Do I know my systematizing part or parts? And if I don't, the invitation is to get to know those parts. I know my parts, but do they know me? The invitation there is to do one of these exercises to really check whether your parts feel known, whether they feel your presence, or whether you've sort of been just acting from one pole of experience of like collecting, gathering, knowing, understanding. Think about all the other sides of that. Being known, feeling seen, feeling safe, having a friend, surrendering to something greater, right? Like all of these opening aspects. And then finally, how is this work impacting my relationships? Have I been able to tell anyone about the work that I'm doing? Am I trying anything out consciously in my relationships? Do I have a partner, a human partner in this work in some sense who's sort of staying with me? Or do I notice that I'm going into the basement, into the cave, and actually further retreating from my from my external relationships? So those are my three lenses. I hope that they're helpful. And I hope that this is taken, in the spirit which I intend, which is just like trying to help kindred spirits on this path. If these lenses aren't helpful, throw them away. I don't come from any place of expertise on this. These are just lenses that I've applied for myself. And as I saw the response on Twitter, I recognized a lot of kindred spirits. So hope this helps.